fold, and I give our White House correspondent Caitlin Collins a lot of credit for deferring to that colleague of hers who was asking a reasonable question, and the president said to this Asian American, "Go ask China about that."
Well, I think I give the journalist a lot of credit, because what she is saying is, "Are you being racist in asking that question to me?" Now, he denied it, but you can judge for yourself, Wolf. There he was saying to her, "Ask China." Why would he do that? And, you know, I think this isn't the first time this has occurred from this president, and I think that, you know, she had a lot of guts in saying to him, "Are you asking me this because because of my appearance and who I am?"
Yeah, which was a fair question and a fair response. Caitlin Collins is with us right now. Caitlin, you were there on the...
Yo, what up, my brother? How's it going, man?
Of what happened on several related issues, and as Gloria correctly points out, the president accusing the former president Barack Obama.
I'm gonna just put this on my Facebook.
Obamagate, he keeps calling it, although when pressed, what crime did he commit? He didn't have an answer for that. Said, stick around, maybe you'll see something in the next few weeks.
Yeah, well, he said the answer to that question was obvious, though he did not state what it was if he feels it's so obvious. And, of course, a strange end there to the press conference where the president had called on me. I was letting my colleague Ww2 from CBS finish her question, and then the president abruptly ended the press conference, did not let me ask my questions. We had multiple questions, of course, for the president. He had not called on us yet. And this was not only about testing, but also the president is facing questions about the coronavirus outbreak happening here at the White House. And what he's going to do moving forward.
I'm still crushing it back. It's a big one. It's a big one for sure.
In our time here at the White House, where the vice president has been here in Washington at the White House and not attended a press conference that the president was having. Clearly some kind of separation happening there, but then when the president was asked at the end, you know, what his point of this entire press conference was to talk about testing and to talk about how his administration has ramped it up, and he repeatedly was talking about where the United States falls in the world ranking of who is doing the most testing not only, you know, overall, but also per capita. And when the reporter at the end was asking why that is such an important thing for him to stress, why does he keep talking about that as in, you know, a global ranking, basically, that's when he got irritated at the end when he was telling Ww2 to ask China that answer to that question. And Wolf, we had several other questions for the president, including about his own decisions that he's made, what he's going to do going forward after he decided not to self-quarantine after his personal valet tested positive for coronavirus. We've seen several
Trump fucked up today, man.
Contact the vice president's press secretary decide to self-quarantine after they had sustained periods of contact, though that is not...
They shouldn't even let him talk.
The president himself is taking. And of course, Wolf, the other thing you noticed is different in that press conference today out in the Rose Garden than what we've seen in any others, is that the staffers were wearing masks, the ones you saw standing alongside the colonnade, even the Health and Human Services Secretary, Jared Kushner.
Yeah, they shouldn't even let him talk, man. He's such a wiener. A weenus.
The guests were wearing masks, but the president himself was not wearing a mask. And we know previously when the CDC issued that guidance at the beginning of April, saying they believe people should cover their face when in public and they couldn't socially distance.
The guy that hacks me, man, he must just fucking sit there and wait for me like this. And wait for me to just come on every day, man. Like fucking... I can't wait to suck his dick and rub his balls and fucking play with his genitals all day.
Yeah, it certainly didn't.
Fuck.
Right,
fucking squid.
Bring in Dr. Sanjay Gupta, our chief medical.
Just hacked me up all day.
Sanjay, let's talk about this.
He already tried to make it fucked with my shit before I even got to turn in on here.
A lot of people would like to get a test, but they're simply not yet available.
Brutal, eh? Just a fucking mad squid.
Brett Giroir, the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services, and President, he said anyone who needs...
Oh, I don't even care anymore. I just think it's comedy. Like, the kids really sucks mad dick. Rides my shit. Before I even get a chance to do anything. That's how bad. That's how much he loved me.
If there's anything there.
Right. I mean, that is the bottom line, Wolf. I mean,
it's okay.
There's a prioritization. You know, people who are symptomatic, healthcare workers probably at the top of the list. People who are symptomatic in general.
I didn't even get a chance to turn on my shit yet, and this kid's already fucking with mine.
That's the challenging thing about this virus. You know, temperature checks and all these types of things.
It's comedy.
Remain, you know, screening tools. But the issue is exactly what you said. That people who don't have any symptoms at all, not only could they have the virus, Wolf, but as we've
I wonder how many
in what is called the
videos I should make today.
Before someone develops symptoms, they could actually be more contagious. I mean, this is tough. I mean, to be fair, this is a tough situation. But what
I should make a
means
bunch.
clearly is that we have to have much more testing. I mean, part of this is physically figuring out where the virus is, being able to turn mitigation into containment, which is very possible. It can be done. It's happened in places around the world. But part of it, I think, as well, well, to your point,
I think I might play some free-for-all.
I mean, the White House in this case is a bit of a microcosm. They test regularly, every day for some people. They did contact tracing. They sort of did things right.
Excuse
in
me.
Being able to contain the virus within the White House. Very contagious, so it's still likely other people will be found to have the virus. But that is sort of the same thing that's going to need to happen at places all over the country. Large institutions, communities, states, the country as a whole. We need to do a lot. Maybe not every single person needs to be tested.
I think that's what we're going to do.
People who are going to be going into public places where they can't reliably physically distance, where I can't say comfortably, I'm going into a situation where I know the people around me have been tested, it's going to make it very challenging. We can do this. We need to do this.
It's a really important issue. We did see people there, certainly the reporters and some others, including the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, that were wearing masks. The president obviously was not wearing a mask. He doesn't want to be seen wearing a mask. The vice president, Mike Pence, even though his press secretary tested positive for coronavirus, Katie Miller, he came to the White House without a mask today as well.
All he does is watch all my shit.
Wearing a mask
He's the one who
of caution, given the fact that two White House officials,
who pushes,
and the
who does that to my videos.
Food to the president,
such a dick rider, faggot.
Both have come down positive for coronavirus.
No question about it.
It's funny.
That's what should be happening, Wolf. I mean, first of all, the situation.
The kid sucks major booty.
It's very tough to maintain physical distance.
Dick sucking motherfucker. I wonder. I bet his boyfriend's got his dick in his ass right there.
You're going to pick up the virus by touching
Fucking
the surface,
squid.
touching your face. You're not going to come in proximal contact with people 6 feet or
Watching
under,
my shit.
Then perhaps you should still have a mask. Maybe you can lower it at that point.
Jealous.
But yeah, no, people should be wearing a mask. I mean, this is almost like a
Yeah.
was asking Ambassador Berkeley.
That's all I can do.
Like protecting the president from a Secret Service standpoint.
Whack ass for sure.
Applies to everybody.
Maybe I should get some green, eh?
Take it even a step further.
One sec.
Vice President Pence, I
I'm slacking.
he and Ambassador
I was on a
Berkeley
food
on
thought
task
today.
force. But you've just seen the head of the CDC, the top infectious disease doctor in the country, and the head of the FDA all go into some sort of quarantine or modified quarantine. That is the right thing to do. That is how you start to contain the virus. And I know Ambassador Birx is running the coronavirus task force along with Vice President Pence. They have important work to do. But, this is a tough situation. They probably need to be self-quarantining as well. This virus does not discriminate. If the Vice President is harboring the virus inside his body, just hasn't tested positive yet, he could potentially infect other people. I mean, that's just the nature of the biology here. So I don't know that these are going to be easy decisions, but they're important ones if we actually want to start talking about containment rather than just continuing to try and slow it down.
And I think it's fair to say as much time as Katie Miller, the Vice President's press secretary, spent with Dr. Fauci or Dr. Hahn or Dr. Redfield, she's clearly spent a lot more time with the Vice President than with any of those scientists and those doctors.
Booty.
Presumably should be very, very cautious right now, even though he's tested regularly, almost every day presumably, comes out negative, but sometimes there are false negatives. 15% or so of these relatively fast tests unfolding. I want to bring in Daniel Dale,
all right, here we go.
Fact checker.
Yeah, so Mo, if you get kicked out of your here, it's probably because of that fucking kid, because he's such a bitch.
What you're discovering, and you've
I always wondered.
I have, Wolf. I think you and our colleagues have basically covered it. It's just not true that anyone who wants one can get one, and in many places there are still restrictions on who is even eligible.
But now I realize that he can.
People only people who have symptoms. I thought it was interesting that Brett Giroir tried to add a caveat to the president's claim.
Bitch ass.
He came up and said that you can get a test if you need one, if you're symptomatic, if you're being a contact trace because you might have had contact with someone who has tested positive. And then the president came back up and returned to the original claim. He said, if you want one, you can get one. This was after Giroir tried to help him out. And I think it's another example of how hard it can be to budge the president from his inaccurate talking points. Wolf, I think it's also important to provide context on what the president and other administration officials are boasting about with regard to per capita testing as it relates to South Korea's. So I think their numbers are now
Your
accurate,
uncle
accurate. The U.S.
started
is now
playing
doing much more testing per capita than South Korea. But it's important to note that the U.S. and South Korea had their first confirmed case right around the same time, and South Korea jumped to a huge lead in the number of tests per capita it was conducting. And that allowed South Korea to crush its curve. South Korea had 34 reported new cases yesterday. That was the highest number in a month. They've had fewer than 300 deaths, where again the U.S. has passed 80,000. So yes, the U.S. has jumped ahead now as of April in per capita testing, but in those crucial early weeks, South Korea was far outpacing the U.S., and experts say that is a significant reason why South Korea has done so much better than the U.S. in handling this outbreak.
Very important point indeed. And let's not lose sight of the big picture right now. Just moments ago, 80,000 Americans have now been confirmed to have died from the coronavirus. 80,000. Here's some perspective, and I just checked. 2 months ago, on March 12th, exactly almost 2 months ago.
How is it showing me this kid playing, but it's not even on my fucking...
38 deaths 2 months ago, 80,000 deaths. Specifically right now, 80,087 deaths in the United States. So 80,000 people have died as a result of the coronavirus in only 2 months. 38. Look how fast that went. And Sanjay, I want your perspective on this. Even some of the best estimates out there, some of the modeling, some of the forecasting, by early August, that number could be 130 or 135,000 Americans dead.
Yeah, I mean, when this particular organization, IHME, changed their projections here, I mean, it was a significant change, Wolf. You remember they had gone up from around 60,000 to 72,000, then basically within a couple of days went to this number that was almost double that. And some of the the initial projections really did not account for the states reopening. So these newer projections are starting to try and account for the states reopening, but still unclear just how much mobility there will be. It looks like people are really starting to move around a lot. I mean, there were these polls that were out, if you remember, as states were considering reopening. If your state reopens, how likely are you to actually go out and do some of these things? And still, the majority of people wouldn't.
That's fucking strange.
The mobility data, which they track by using anonymous cell phone data, seems to suggest that people are moving around quite a bit. Well, so, sad to say, and again, as I've said so many times over the last few months, I don't enjoy and take no joy in saying this stuff, but I think the models are even going to be higher than that. I mean, you can just look at the trends right now in the country, start to follow them out. Hopefully none of these places start to go into what's called exponential growth. If they start to actually really start to develop clusters in some of these places, sadly, we could see a lot more people be contracting this illness, getting sick, and possibly dying.
And Sanjay, one other important point that came out during the course of this news conference, the president suggesting, well, maybe he's not going to be spending a whole lot of time personally with the vice president. I don't know if he's concerned about continuity of government or anything along those lines, but the vice president was not there, even though he's in Washington. He was not in the Rose Garden today. He's almost always at these events with the president. Wasn't there today, and the president at one point said, I guess we could talk.
That'd be the dumbest name I've ever seen.
I think that would be significant if we're not going to see the president of the United States together with the vice president of the United States, maybe even if they're wearing masks.
Absolutely. I mean, that probably is a recommendation that my guess was made to the president, the vice president, even much earlier than now. You have a contagious virus. It's in the White House. I'm sure they're disinfecting. They're obviously taking these precautions, but these are still just precautions. I mean, it's the best we can do right now. I think people sort of fundamentally understand that these precautions are important, but they're not a fail-safe in terms of protecting this virus from being contagious and still continuing to transmit from person to person. So now we're talking about a situation where in the White House, the virus is there, the president and the vice president both work there. I think it's really important to make sure you can do everything you can to stop the spread, especially among people who we know have been exposed to the virus. The vice president was likely exposed to his health secretary in some way, whether it was a low risk or medium risk exposure, we don't know. But what did have an exposure, and that's of concern. Even if he's being tested on a regular basis, it could be that he tests negative for several days, and then from an exposure.
Yo, what up, Mo?
I mean, again, this is tough to talk about.
Did the guy kick you, or he's still there?
Sort of a little jarring to hear that we're talking about the White House and the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States this way, but this is a micro. It doesn't care. It doesn't care who or where.
He must have kicked you.
It just wants to go and jump
Kid your booty.
and wants to continue to find hosts, whoever those hosts may be.
Garbage.
Bring in Soto right now, our media.
Garbage.
Brian, at the very, very end of that 1 hour appearance by the president in the Rose Garden, and you were watching all
He
of
just
this.
won't stop.
Really once again, this is the CBS White House.
I want you to change your channel.
Play the clip. She asked a reasonable
Give it to
question
somebody
and
else.
watch the president's response.
You give it to somebody else, fag.
Why is this a global competition to you if everyday Americans are still losing their lives and we're still seeing more cases every day?
Must be tough being a Mitch.
Everywhere in the world. And maybe that's a question you should ask China. Don't ask me, ask China that question, okay? When you ask them that question, you may get a very unusual answer. Yes, behind you, please.
Sir, why are you saying that to me specifically?
I'm telling you, I'm not saying it specifically to anybody. I'm saying it to anybody that would ask a nasty question like
That's not a
that.
nasty
Please
question.
go ahead.
Why does it matter?
Okay, anybody else?
All right, then he had originally called on Caitlin Collins, our White House correspondent. She was polite enough and did the journalistic right thing. Let her colleague follow up, which is appropriate. I spent 7 years as a White House correspondent. We often let other White House correspondents do a follow-up question to the president at these kinds of events, just out of simple courtesy to our colleagues. And that's what Caitlin Collins did. The president then wouldn't even address a question that she was ready to pose. But let me get your thoughts on that exchange the president had with the CBS White House correspondent.
Well, clearly the president was rattled enough to walk off because he didn't want to hear the questions from Caitlin Collins and Li Zhejiang. And I think what we saw in that exchange with Li Zhejiang is something that has racial overtones. It is racist to look at an Asian American White House correspondent and say, ask China. This isn't happening in a vacuum. This is part of a pattern of behavior from the president that goes back many years. So he doesn't have the benefit of the doubt that someone might have if, for the first time ever in their life, they made a comment like that to a reporter. But the president has been rattled by Li Zhejiang's questions in the past. He has treated her and other female reporters differently in the past. And he's also had this pattern of reacting to minority journalists in a very specific and different way, Wolf. For example, a few years ago, President Trump said to April Ryan, a black correspondent, to follow up with the Congressional Black Caucus because he kind of just assumed they were friends. And here today, he's saying to a Chinese-born journalist, ask China. Now, of course, he says he was directing, he would have said the same thing to anyone. But the pattern suggests otherwise. The pattern suggests a racial reaction to certain individuals in the press corps. And that's deeply, deeply disturbing. Let me just tell you Li Zhejiang's background for everybody who doesn't know. She's a White House correspondent for CBS, one of the best reporters on the beat. And she describes herself in her biography as a Chinese-born West Virginian. What a beautiful sentiment, right? To be Chinese-born and then to be a part of this country and to be from West Virginia and to describe herself in that way. Normally, we wouldn't even be talking about her background. We wouldn't even be talking about her heritage. But it's come up because the president routinely targets reporters who are women and people of color. In this case, he targeted Li Zhejiang today, but this is a pattern. And as much as we are competitive in the press corps, I think it's important we show solidarity in moments like this and call out racial kind of reactions from the president.
And once again, her question was totally fair. Serious, tough question, but
Great
totally
question.
fair question. And the president obviously didn't want to hear about that. Then he goes and attacks this young journalist from CBS News, and I give her a lot of credit for the way she responded. I also stand by for a moment, Brian, because I want to bring back Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, you were courteous to your colleague, and I applaud you for that. You did the right thing. You let your colleague do a follow-up question. You could see she wanted to follow up, and that's what we used to do when I was a White House correspondent all the time. But what were you going to ask the president if he would have allowed you to ask a question?
Yeah, well, it's standard protocol just to let someone finish their question. They were clearly still having an exchange back and forth. The president had called on me. That's why I was standing there waiting to go to the microphone, and then the president cut off, did not take my questions because I let Ww2 finish. Though we had plenty of questions for the president, Wolf, not only about testing, which is the point of that press conference. That's why he had his other officials out there to speak to reporters. And then, you know, he called on me initially. I just want to point that out. He had actually called on me to ask a question, and then he did not let me ask those questions that we had for the president. And of course, there are a ton of topics to ask the president about, many questions in that press conference there about testing, but not only that, there are questions about whether the vice president are going to start separating themselves, what he is going to do given the fact that two people who work closely to him and to the vice president both tested positive for coronavirus last week. There's a new mask policy here at the White House. We saw something we never see there in the Rose Garden where people are wearing masks, and the guests, the staffers, and some of the president's own cabinet secretaries and his top aides, including his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, was also wearing a mask. But the president abruptly cut off that press conference there at the end because he did not like the follow-up questions that he was getting about a question and an answer that he had given to a reporter. It's not clear why the president would not have just answered those questions if he was confident in what his answer was and then moved on to me and let me ask my questions before finishing the press conference. Wolf, I mean, it's inexplicable. It doesn't really make a lot of sense why the president wouldn't just take the questions from the reporter that he had called on.
Yeah, and he basically said, you had your chance, you didn't ask the question, and that's why he's not going to let you ask a question. But it was totally appropriate for you to allow Weijia Jiang to go ahead and do her follow-up question after what the president had insinuated. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Do you want to, Brian, you want to react to that?
I just think it shows the president is trying to portray strength, trying to present all this data and try to impress the country, but then it's only paper thin. Because when he is questioned, when there are follow-ups, when he is asked about why it's different for the White House and everywhere else in America, he just seems to fold under the pressure. This is a president who's tweeted or retweeted 120 times just in 24 hours, all sorts of nonsense and conspiracy theories. And it doesn't seem anyone in the Republican Senate, anyone in the Republican leadership is willing to stand up and say, behave like a president, behave like a leader, and not as someone who just wants to challenge, who wants to pretend to be strong until he's challenged.
Yeah.
And Wolf,
Go ahead.
I want to note there was actually a big discrepancy that needed to be asked about there, and a confusion in what they were telegraphing. And one was who can get tested and who needs to be tested throughout the country. Because the president seemed to be sending this message that anyone who wants a test can get a test. The admiral there, who has been really the point man on testing for the administration throughout this pandemic, was really saying that people who need a test can get a test. And he was talking about the importance of people who are symptomatic getting tests. But of course, a big question for people going back to work is even if they're
Shit,
not
I can play with anybody.
can they get a test? And that is critically important, Wolf, because we even saw it play out here at the White House last week, where these people are tested daily, and the vice president's press secretary, who was constantly in the West Wing, constantly interacting with top officials, was asymptomatic. And then she got a test the next day and was positive. Now, you've seen both sides of the coin here, because the valet who tested positive last week actually showed up to work. He was exhibiting symptoms, and that's why he was tested, and then, of course, tested positive. It's very important for people going back to work to know they can get a test, even if they do not have symptoms, because they want to be able to get tested to feel comfortable, because you can have coronavirus and not have symptoms, as Sanjay Gupta has said 100 times, maybe more, on our air. So that's a really important distinction, but that's not one that the president let us ask about today.
And some of those tests do result, about 50%, we're told, do result in false negatives. You actually do have coronavirus, but the test shows that you don't when you really do. So those tests are not perfect to begin with. Let me get Gloria back into this conversation. Gloria, yeah, go ahead.
There's one more thing I want to add to this conversation, because I think we've covered an awful lot of the president's bizarre behavior, particularly at the end of this press conference. But he also charged, as he did in a tweet over the weekend, that the Democratic governors really don't want to get their citizens back to work because, of course, they want to use it to their political advantage. I think maybe he ought to have another conversation with Governor Cuomo, whom he apparently watches every day, and who today outlined in detail a kind of gradual reopening of his state. He said there's no effort on the part of certain blue states to get into gear. The people won't stand for it. They want our country open, and the blue states are not showing enough effort to turn their economies back on. Now, he also has claimed at assorted times that he has very good relationships with a lot of these blue state governors. And that, in fact, he mentions Cuomo and has used Cuomo in an ad of his, praising the president. Well, what blue state governors do not want to get their people back to work? And how exactly is it politically advantageous for any governor to keep their people at home, given what it does to their state's economies? So it was remarkable in the way that he kind of explained his tweet over the weekend, but he did not back down on it, just like he did not back down on the bizarre charge about Obama's crime without explaining what it was, because it ought to be obvious to all of us.
Yeah, that was extraordinary as well. He's accusing his immediate predecessor in the White House, former President Barack Obama.
Trump is savage, yes, brother.
Crime.
Oh, he did it again, eh?
What crime? What exact crime?
Blazing.
Did President Obama
motherfucking yeah. I'm gonna actually complain to Activision
he said,
in a minute
you know
here.
The crime. I'm just looking at my notes. He said, "You know the crime." Well, we don't know the crime.
Right.
The president may think there may have been a crime, but he refused to say what the crime was, and he said, "Just see what happens in the coming weeks down the road."
Trump is
that was pretty
fucking idiot.
You
need to learn how to speak.
Has to say about that. Now he's already
If he's
said
going to be in that
that
position.
The president has committed an obvious crime. You know, my question is, does the Attorney General know what this is? Is the Attorney General going to charge former President Obama with a crime? I mean, you know, you think about the context of this. This is a president speaking from the Rose Garden in the midst of a pandemic and attacking this journalist, attacking a former president, and attacking Democratic governors in this country for not wanting to help their citizens and reopen their states.
Yeah, it's. I think it's fair to say it's pretty amazing to hear the current president of the United States, make these kinds of charges against, especially the former president of the United States. As you say, the Democratic governors, the journalists were used to that by now because he does that all the time. But specifically to accuse President Obama of committing a crime when he was asked what crime is he going to be charged with, refusing to answer. That's pretty amazing when you think about that as well. This was an opportunity, Gloria, for the president to come out there and reassure the American public that he knew what was going on, and he was doing the best he could to prevent more Americans from dying. Once again, 80,000 Americans over the past 2 months have died here in the United States. But by going too far in these other areas, way too far, he missed that opportunity.
Well, this is why people in the White House prevailed upon him to stop doing these longer briefings, because he really can't help himself, and he doesn't do himself any good. And so he did have this. This was supposed to be sort of phase one. We're reopening. Here's all the progress we've made on tests. And inevitably, it kind of devolves into this nasty exchange with journalists whenever he's asked a question that he feels doesn't treat him fairly, or is it all probing, by the way? And, you know, this is a president who's not used to getting a lot of probing questions because he hasn't, until the pandemic, he hasn't faced the media generally other than at a heliport outside the White House. So he really, when he is questioned in a probing way, he is clearly defensive and he fights back. And it's not an appealing characteristic, should we say that? And the public has said, and you can see it in the polling, they don't like it.
Gloria, stand by. I want to update our viewers on what's going on around the country right now. At least 48 states will be reopened to some extent by the end of this week. But the model often cited by the White House now says an explosive increase in mobility is raising the projected number of U.S. deaths to 137,000 by early August. 80,000 deaths right now. Right, once again, just moments ago, the death toll here in the United States surpassed 80,000, with more than 1.3 million Americans having confirmed coronavirus cases. Worldwide, there are more than 4 million cases and more than 250,000 deaths right now. Joining us now, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. Mayor Frey, thank you so much for joining us. I want to get your reaction to some of the stuff we just saw. You heard the president say, we have prevailed on testing. Would you agree with him based on what's going on in your community?
No, I would not. We have not met the moment. We have not prevailed. Saying we have prevailed at this point is like being at mile 10 of a 26-mile marathon and raising your hands in victory. That is not where we're at right now. We've got a whole lot of work left to do. And at this point, in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, we're recognizing where we are in this race, and we're keeping our nose to the grindstone.
The White House says that it will now allocate $11 billion in previously appropriated funds to states to increase their testing capacity. How much of a difference will all this make in your ability to reopen your beautiful city of Minneapolis quickly and safely?
Testing is going to be perhaps the critical component of opening safely. It's got to be testing, followed by tracing, followed by isolating for those who have come up with positive tests. And that's actually exactly how we're collaborating with our state right now. We've got a wonderful partnership with our state, our University of Minnesota, and then the Mayo Clinic, and we hope to be able to get up to 20,000 tests per day. Right now we're hovering around 5,000. And yes, in order to do this properly, in order to do this with our eyes wide open and responding to the data, we're going to need more tests.
Why hasn't the curve of new cases in Minnesota flattened already?
Well, in Minnesota, we took fairly aggressive action very early on, and so we did not get those spikes from the get-go. And in Minnesota, because we've been so effective at extending the curve, that's a big part of why we're seeing ascending numbers right now. In other words, rather than have a huge spike early on, the numbers increase over time. And the second piece is naturally, with an increase in tests, you're going to see an increase in positive numbers. And we're not shying away from the results here. We're not hiding from the realities. We're actually going into some of these hotspots. We're going into our senior centers. We're going into congregate care facilities. We're going into food processing plants. These are areas where we can expect to have higher rates of contraction. And we're testing there. And yes, we are seeing positives as well. And so as we are seeing an ascension right now in the number of cases, we've also given ourselves some time to prepare. Because here's an important piece that people seem to be missing oftentimes. By doing all of this affirmative work, we are not preventing the total number of people
what's going on,
contracting COVID-19.
One sec, I'm trying to get
We are preventing the total number of people contracting COVID-19 all at once. And that's an important distinguishing factor, especially as we gradually being a key word.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to everybody in Minneapolis. Good luck to everybody in Minnesota right now. We'll stay in close touch, Mayor Fry, with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to have much more on all the breaking news right after
this. The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, brought to you by Dell Technologies.
Oh.
Here's the thing about managing multiple clouds for your business. When you've got public clouds and private clouds and hybrid clouds, things can get a bit cloudy for you. But now, there's the Dell Technologies Cloud.
Actually did, too.
Powered
tea.
by VMware.
There's a tea.
A single hub for a consistent operating experience across all your clouds. That should clear things up.
This is PillPack. It's my new pharmacy. They package my medication by the dose and deliver it right to my door. And the best part, their service is free. I only pay my copays. Does your pharmacy do that?
PillPack by Amazon Pharmacy.
Buying a car from Vroom is so easy. All you need is a phone and a finger. Just scroll through amazing hand-picked low-mileage cars and tap to buy. Thousands of cars priced below market value. Go to Vroom.com and pick your favorite.
Hey, allergy muddlers. Do your sneezes turn heads? Try Zyrtec. Zyrtec starts working hard at hour 1 and works twice as hard when you take it again the next day. Zyrtec. Muddle no more.
And try Children's Zyrtec for consistently powerful relief of your kids' allergies.
In this world where people are staying at home, many of life's moments are being put on hold. At Carvana, we understand that for some, getting a car just can't wait. To help, we're giving our customers up to 90 days to make their first payment. Shop online from the comfort of your couch and get your car with touchless delivery to keep you.
Hey, sorry, man.
Peace of mind. All Carvana
I just got mail.
cars have a 7-day return policy.
Expect to get.
So if
Fuck, you got anybody else?
We're here for you. At Carvana, the safer way to buy a car.
We are Very, and we created the Very Desk to improve the way people work. But we're so much more than that. We have all the furniture and accessories you need to create a productive workspace in your office or in your home. And Very makes it easy with fast shipping, free delivery, and simple setup, so you're ready for business wherever you are. Upgrade your workspace today, and for a limited time, get 10% off at Very.com.
You turn 40 and everything goes. Tell me.
Good shit. What's up, Big John? Whoop.
I'm closer to my retirement days than I'm a college.
What you up to?
I'm just trying to get a party together really quickly here so we can get to shoosting.
Am I going to be okay? I know people
How many you got?
Be okay.
Got 3, I think.
You 3 counting me?
Yeah. Guidance to help you
Yeah.
stay on track, no matter what comes next.
The minute you're diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, you should have a Dexcom.
my
Knowing where
son's
your
on.
numbers are going before they
All
get
right.
there, it's a superpower. I've had other...
He's what you want to play with anyway.
I'm cool with whoever, man. As long as we can work as a team. For sure.
Oh,
Better.
oh yeah.
Irish. Geeky. What's up, Geeky? How you doing, man? Good shit.
Hey, what's up, man? Long time. How you guys been?
Good. Just trying to start a little team here before we get going.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What are you guys playing?
Hardcore TDM.
TDM?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Looks like my son's playing the Forest.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Got 4. Oh, a couple more.
Well,
Yeah. What's up, BOP? Yes. I'm gonna have to restart this bitch.
what kind of guns you guys running in your squad?
We got I'm using all this stuff. I'm already done with all of my shit, basically. Trying to get everything gold and all that bullshit. I'm using the Bison.